message. And in verse 11, chapter 4, the Lord said to him, "Who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, and I will be with your mouth." But it's still not enough for Moses. He still won't change his mindset to focus on God. "Please, Lord, send a message by whomever you will." The anger of the Lord burned against Moses, and he said, "Is there not your brother Aaron the Levite? I know that he speaks fluently. Moreover, behold, he is coming out to meet you. When he sees you, he will be glad in heart." The principles that we're working on here, God has been building them in my life for probably the last 8 to 10 years, refining them over the last few years and making me practice them in the last couple of weeks. This part about Aaron, I had never stopped to pay attention to before. We just kind of read over it and keep going. Moses was arguing with God now. He was rebelling against God. God had revealed himself, and "I'm not going to go, God, send somebody else." God's like, "I'm going to use you whether you want to or not. We're going to do this the easy way or the hard way. But I will send Aaron." And a little bit later, he tells Moses that Aaron is on his way. How did Aaron get out of Egypt? How did Aaron know where to go? How did Aaron know this was the time? Moses had no idea that God had been work all the way along in Aaron's life, in the life of the children of Israel, to prepare Moses for this moment. Again, I didn't know how else to word it, but we have a God who works. And an example that God works all things together for his glory and our good. Only a sovereign God who is in control of all things could direct Aaron to leave Egypt or escape or however he got away, to come to Moses at this time, at this place, in an answer to Moses' prayer, in spite of his rebellion, that in the face of Moses' rebellion, God was faithful and sovereign to work all things together for good. And God, in the midst of my failures, in the midst of times of my rebellion, that God is still at work. Even if I can't see it, and especially when I don't deserve it. God brought Aaron to Moses at the exact right moment in the middle of nowhere. And especially when I don't deserve it. And especially when I don't deserve it. God exact no. Moses' rebellion, God had already ordained it, was already at work. Aaron was already on his way. But you skip ahead a little bit to the foot of Mount Sinai in the people's rebellion. Who is it who actually fastens? It's Aaron. The unwillingness of Moses to simply surrender to who God is and letting God be God and that God will do what he said he will do winds up costing them. But we skip ahead a little bit then. In the end of chapter 4, Moses and Aaron come before the people. The Lord said to Aaron, "Go." In verse 28, Moses told Aaron all the words. Verse 29, Moses and Aaron went as assembled the elders of the children of Israel, and Aaron spoke all the words which the Lord had spoken to Moses, performed all of the signs in the sight of the people, and the people believed. And when they heard that the Lord was concerned about the children of Israel, that he had seen their affliction, they bowed down and worshipped. What a glorious moment. All of these centuries they have been crying out to God for deliverance and to send somebody, and God does. He keeps his promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and even Joseph we'll see in a little bit. But you can also see their expectation. You read between the lines and you recognize what's coming. What is the expectation of the children of Israel? Expectation. Lines and you recognize of the we're going to pass and go. You go on down just a little bit into chapter 5. So they've gone to the children of Israel. Moses and Aaron have explained to them what God is going to do. The children of Israel are worshiping. They're excited. We're getting out of here. Go. The story. Things get hard. They were hard before. Now they're going to get really hard. Because not only are the children of Israel going to have to maintain the number of bricks that they make, they've got to go get their own supply. The story. Things get hard. Going to get. They are the maintain the go get leaf. We have a potential tendency of the children of Israel to even begin to follow them. God was needing to get a hold of the heart and the mind of the children of Israel that He was God alone and that He was going to glorify Himself before the people of Israel and the people of Egypt. He was going to reveal His power and glory to the world through them. But He was also then preparing them to be ready to go. My friends, this morning, one of the purposes for which God allows trials into our life is to get us ready to go. To get us to be willing to let go of the hard grip on the things of this world and of this life. And to be ready to go. Pastor Steve talked about last week the glory, the crown that awaits. To be ready to go. But in this, they make a bad trade. Go down to verse 21 of chapter 5. And the children of Israel said to them, "May the Lord look upon you and judge you, for you have made us odious, disgusting in Pharaoh's sight, and in the sight of his servants, to put a sword in their hand to kill us." Moses returned to the Lord and said, "O Lord, why have you brought harm to the people? Why did you ever send me? For ever since I came to Pharaoh and speak in your name, he has done harm to this people, and you have not delivered your people at all." Moses and the children of Israel make a bad trade in the face of unmet expectations, in the face of what they cannot understand and what they can't see. They begin a pattern of questioning God, questioning His character, and accusing Him of being less than faithful. They're beginning the habit of accusing God of killing them rather than delivering them. And that's going to become a common theme in their rebellion. It cost them. We begin to see the root of resentment and bitterness, accusing God of not being who He is and accusing God of being less than faithful. Instead of experiencing peace and joy in the midst of it, they begin to experience discouragement and doubt. And there is a vast difference between asking God our honest, hard questions and accusing God of being less than faithful. God invites our hard, honest questions. You look at the psalmist. So many psalms run that way, where the psalmist shows us a heart poured out to God in the midst of heartache. But you also see him responding in these biblical principles, "But you are God, and I will trust you." You see it, Habakkuk's become one of my favorite books. Habakkuk asks his questions to God. Asking our hard questions of God, God never condemns His people for asking honest questions. He invites them. He welcomes them. To me, it is a Habakkuk asks his questions to God. Hard questions. Condemns question. He invites to I can't do this, but I'm going to trust you. And it's in those moments God is able to bring his peace and his comfort, even his joy in the face of our circumstances. He's able to minister to us when we're broken before him. But instead, Israel went right to accusing God of not being God, being faithful. And they forfeited peace and joy and a close fellowship with their God, and instead had resentment and bitterness and fear and anger, doubts. It's a vast difference in asking God our questions and what the children of Israel were beginning to do here. Different. God our children. God in his grace reminds him of who he is. Chapter 6, and the Lord said to Moses, "Now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh, for under compulsion he will let them go, and under compulsion he will drive them out of the land." God spoke further to Moses and said to him, "I am the Lord. I appear to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as God Almighty, but by my name, Lord, to them. I established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land in which they sojourned. I have heard the groaning of the children of Israel, because the Egyptians are holding them in bondage, and I have remembered my covenant. Tell them now, I am the Lord. I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. I will deliver you from their bondage. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm." That idea that it is going to be powerful. "And with great judgment, I will take you for my people. I will be your God, and you will know that I am the Lord when I have taken you out of here. I will bring you to that land," he goes on in verse 6. God reminds Moses, God put him more out of control. God put him more out of control, certain. It reminds us from God, will suffer persecution to be doing what again, we get to look back with some 20/20 hindsight of what God is doing in Moses. Stephanie and I, we've had the privilege of being in ministry one form or another for about 32 years. We've had the privilege of church plant work, of camp ministry. Got to be the youth pastor at the church that she grew up in that would become the parent church of the daughter church her parents helped with. Become the parent church of the daughter church her parents helped with. We got to be in Flores for 16 years. But early on in our ministry, in the middle of that church plant work, we were living in Atlantic. And I will preface this by don't ever tell God anything, but don't ever tell God it can't get worse. We went through about a 6-month stretch. Things started happening in the church. And we're going to remember it like it was yesterday. Oh, things surely can't get worse. Each month it got a little bit worse. Now, I don't remember what month it was now, maybe month 4. I was involved, it was in the middle of winter, working in Des Moines, living in Atlantic, hour-and-a-half drive, and I was involved in a 22-car pileup in the blizzard. The nurse calls Stephanie and tells her, "Your husband's been in an accident." And then pauses. Oh, he's fine. God was incredibly gracious in that moment, sparing my life. Within the next couple of months, Stephanie's dad would die from a massive stroke. God graciously allowed us to be there for that last week, though. We can look back and see God's phenomenal provision and see His hand and see His graciousness in it all. But I can also remember it being at the point where there was no place else to look but up. And God's had to remind me of that moment several times. And that's where Moses is. Moses was where he was supposed to be, doing what he was supposed to be doing, but God was not done what he needed to do in Moses. And Moses finally got to the point where there was no place else to look but to God. And you may find yourself, I know where I'm supposed to be, I know I'm doing what God is supposed to be doing. Why? It just may be that God is preparing you for something you just can't see yet. Moses needed to learn in that moment to simply look up and to let God be God. We see a revelation here. God continues to reveal that He is a God who is working, even if we can't see it and we don't understand, that things are never out of His control. Nothing ever happens by chance. There is not a rut on the floor room of the kingdom of God where He has caused a rut because He's pacing the floor, trying to figure out how He's going to handle this moment. What is He going to do? Our God is sovereignly in control of your moment, trying to figure out how He's going to handle. God is sovereign. Your moment, hard it is. Because God is who He said He is, and He's going to do what He said He's going to do. God is at work, and God has caused a rut because He's pacing the lamb in a precise way and put the blood over the doorposts. That night, when the Passover lamb and a lot of other things, but to prepare a lamb and a blood over the doorpost, the Passover done and put the blood on the doorpost. Remember, they've never been here before. They've never been asked to do this before. But in this moment, Israel out with great abundance. The Egyptians drive Israel out with great abundance. Just Israel. From we see God is God alone, and there is no other. We see that He is Lord alone of life. From we see God is God alone, and there is no other. We see that He is Lord alone of life and death and of all who live. We see His justice. Our God is not a God of immediate justice, but He is a God of ultimate justice. He judged Egypt, just as He promised He would. We see His mercy and His grace. We see the beginning understanding of redemption in substitute and sacrifice. And so they leave Egypt, and we come to chapter 13. Chapter 13, verse 17. And Pharaoh had let the people go. God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines. Pastor Steve walked us through this last week. One, because they would have to go past Egyptian outposts and the Philistine army. They would become absolutely distracted and want to go back. God took them a long way because He knew best. Sometimes God takes us on a route we don't understand because He knows best. Verse 18, hence God led the people around by the way of the wilderness of the Red Sea. Verse 19, Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for he made the children of Israel swear, saying, God will take you out of here. Make sure you take my bones with you. And they set out from Succoth and Etham. The Lord was going before them in a pillar of cloud by day, a pillar of fire by night. He never took away, in verse 22, He did not take away the pillar of cloud by day or the pillar of fire by night from before the people. They leave Egypt, as a solemn fulfillment of the promise that God gave Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Joseph, they also have Joseph's bones. And they've got a pillar of cloud in the day, and at night a divine nightlight, a pillar of fire, in the absolute presence of God. In the midst of everything they're going through and everything that lies ahead of them, God reveals to them that He is their shepherd. He will guide them every step of the way, and He will never abandon them. He is all wise in His direction and His course, and He is everywhere present with them. But they make a bad trade. We know these well. We come down to chapter 14, verse 10. Pharaoh draws near. He realizes he just lost his workforce, and he wants it back. He takes his best chariot men, and they take out after the children of Israel. They're between the Red Sea and the advancing Egyptian army. But they've got Joseph's bones, and they've got the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire. But instead of holding on to what God has already revealed to them and continues to add to that, instead of holding on to the very presence of God that just delivered them, in verse 11, is it because there were no graves in Egypt that you take us away to die in the wilderness? Why have you dealt with us in this way, bringing us out of Egypt? Is this not the word we spoke to you in Egypt, saying, leave us alone that we might serve the Egyptians? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than die in the wilderness. We see the development of a mindset trading in the truth of God. In the face of the unknown, in the face of things out of control and wasn't their plan, in the midst of things that were not according to their expectations. Great, we're out of Egypt, He's going to take us. Remember, God's still got a work He needs to do in the children of Israel, and He's not done. Things that were hard, things they didn't like, they trade away the truth of God for a lie. When did they ever say, leave us alone, we want to stay in Egypt? But that's exactly what they choose to lie to themselves here. And a lie about God, and that God had brought them there to die. They trade in the truth of God for a lie. Ray Stedman has written a book, Let God Be God. It's a deep dive into the life of Job that maybe we can go through sometime. A lie. Ray Stedman, be God of Job, made this. I just had to sit in for a while. He says, God is for you, but He doesn't work for you. And is not in the marshes where they could kind of split apart. On dry, walked across immediately on dry ground. They were walking in the presence of God could do. And they come out on the other side, and the Egyptian army is chasing after them, and God destroys the army in the sea. The waters of Marah, for they were bitter. The waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Humbled at Moses, saying, "What?" The Lord showed him a tree, and he water. 6 as a result of this, Israel grumbled against Moses in the wilderness, and the sons of Israel said to them, "Would that we had died by the Lord's hand in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat." Was that ever a description of their time in Egypt? No. They're choosing to believe a lie again. Where we ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out into the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Verse 11. 12, I've heard the grumblings of the children of Israel. Speak to them, saying, at twilight you shall eat meat. God was going to bring in quail. In the morning you shall be filled with bread, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God. Do you see the principle playing out? That God is who he said he is. He's going to do what he said he's going to do. He is God and I am not. I simply need to hold on to that truth. But here in this moment, could Israel tell you what had happened? Yep, they could tell you about the Passover. They could tell you every detail of what it was like to walk across dry ground in the Red Sea. But they were unwilling to apply it to their life in this moment and hold on to the truth of God. Traded the truth of God for the lie that it was better in Egypt than to walk with God here. Traded in the truth of God for a lie that God really isn't who he says he is, and he really isn't faithful. That night they ate quail. The next morning and for the next 40-some years, there was manna on the ground every day. We're not sure how long, but not very long down the road, they get thirsty. And again in chapter 17, verse 3, why now have you brought us up from Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? Where they had tested the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not? Well, wait a minute. Every morning, the same morning that they got thirsty and accused God of not being God and not being faithful, they ate manna off the ground, just like God promised. All that night was the pillar of fire. The very moment they're accusing God of not being faithful because they're thirsty, the pillar of cloud is in their presence. God was among them. They just weren't willing to acknowledge it and to surrender to his presence and to hold on to what they knew to be true. Imagine the difference if in this moment they would have said, God, we're thirsty. We don't know where we're going to get water. We're in the wilderness. But God, we're going to hold on to you. Imagine how different things could have been. We're going to hold on to you. Imagine how back to the habit of refusing to apply the truth of God to their day. And even accusing God in the very midst of his presence. Accusing God of not being with them. We see resentment building and bitterness and rebellion. It costs them grumbling and complaining spirit, distrust, and discontentment. But we see the long-suffering patience of God. He's like all the way over to mountain 40 days. Every day there's manna on the ground. Every day there's water to drink. Every day the pillar of cloud is there. Every day the pillar of fire is there. Every day the presence of God is right in front of them in the mountain. Every day the presence of God is right in front of them in the mountain. Is there every day the pillar of fire is there. It's right in front. In chapter 32, in verse 1, the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain. The people assembled to Aaron and said to him, make us a god who will go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we don't know what's become of him. Aaron tells him to give him your gold. In his excuse to Moses, well, we threw in the gold and out popped this calf. Of a delayed response of the unknown, that what they couldn't control, unmet expectations, and they rebelled against God. not only wishing they would rather be in Egypt than to be in the very presence of God, but willing to worship a false god to get there. Rejecting the God who had revealed himself, who was taking care of them. That very morning there was manna, and the next morning there would be manna. And in spite of themselves, God's presence never left. And yet they still would not hold on to what they knew to be true. Fast forwarding, God gives them instructions for the tabernacle, where God would literally take up a presence among his people. But they need some of the furnishings. Where did the gold, the precious jewels, the fine fabrics all come from? When they left Egypt with abundance. God gifted artisans to be able to craft the gold and to sew and to do all of that, but where were those crafts perfected? All the years in slavery. That even in the midst of their darkest time, God was preparing them for what was coming. But still, the children of Israel had the mindset of being unwilling, of refusing to hold on to what they knew to be true. That he is their provider, he is righteous, he is good, he is glorious, and he loves them and he longs for them to have fellowship with him. But they would not. And that brings us to the Canaan land. In Numbers 11, we see a rebellion beginning, even before they get to the Canaan land, a grumbling and complaining about the manna and the quail. This is where God sends quail until they get literally sick of it. At Sinai, it cost them, but it even cost them their lives in rebellion. It was going to cost lives here because of their rebellion. At the end of chapter 11, as they complain about the manna and the quail, it leads into chapter 12 of Aaron and Miriam complaining against Moses that they wanted a share of the glory. God has to remind them that I might speak through other prophets and people, but I talk to Moses face to face. He's my servant. But it's laying the groundwork for the rebellion that we know all too well when they send in the spies. They send in the spies to spy out the Canaan land. Joshua and Caleb come back with the report, yeah, there's giants in the land, but look at the fruit of it. God's going to give it to us. Let's go. The other 10 come back, yeah, there's good stuff in the land, but there's giants. We're going to die. They give the people a bad report, and the people choose to believe them instead of holding on to the truth of God. To the point that we come down in chapter 14, verse 10, all the congregation set to stone Joshua and Caleb and Moses and Aaron. They were going to kill them because it wasn't meeting their expectations. The children of Israel had built in their mindset, instead of holding on to the truth that God is who he said he is, he's going to do what he said he's going to do, then he is God and I am not, that they would continually trade in the truth. The children of Israel had built in their the truth that God is God and I am not, continued for a lie. And when it mattered the most, when the promised land of what had been before them for 400 years is right across the river, all they refuse because their mindset only sees the giants and does not see their God. When for Joshua and Caleb, all they could see was their God. The giants were nothing. And it would cost them. A self-induced pattern of grumbling and complaining became rebellion and unfaithfulness and discontentment, lying to themselves and lying about God, giving up what they knew for what they didn't. In the face of the unmet expectations, they turned away from God and instead chose rebellion. And it cost them more than they wanted to pay. The next 40 years wandering the wilderness until that generation, all but Jacob and Joshua and Caleb, would die. We look back at the children of Israel and we shake our heads at how could they go through all of this and all of this revelation of God and not get it? We need to be careful. Because as children of God, now we get to look back at the cross. We get to look back at the finished work of Christ on the cross. We get to look back at the empty tomb and the power of the resurrection. We get to look back at the glory of our salvation. We have the completed authoritative Word of God in our hand. And yet how many times in the face of the unknown or the unmet expectations, what I can't control, what is hard, are there areas in my life where I've traded the truth of God for a lie? Instead of holding on to what I know to be true about God, I've allowed Satan to deceive me in even areas in my life where I am doubting when it will. It was discouraging. It was hard. It was discouraging. It was hard. But it was as clear as day, God reminding me, but don't forget who I am. That I am God. He is who He says He is. He's going to do what He said He's going to do. He is God and I am not. Hold on to what you know to be true. Apply these things, the moments of your life facing testing, trials, facing temptation, and see what God will do. Apply these truths as we walk in our day, and God will prove Himself to be faithful. The worship team would come. And as we worship together one more time, finishing up our morning, maybe our act of worship is just being still before God. God, I give you this place in my heart. I give you this struggle. I give you this temptation. I give you my rebellion. To hold on to the truth of who you are. See what God will do.
If you're able, please stand and join us.
Standing on the promises of Christ my King, through eternal ages let His praises ring. Glory in the highest I will shout and sing. Standing on the promises of God. Standing on the promises of God, my Savior. Standing. I'm standing on the promises of God. Standing on the promises that cannot fail. When the howling storms about and fear assail, by the living world I thought I shall prevail. Standing on the promises of God. Standing on the promises of God, my Savior. Standing on the promises of God. What a fellowship, what a joy divine, leaning on the everlasting arms. What a blessedness, what